Hello, Rob here, and welcome to R&B Reviews. I finished my first week of April Fool's Comedy Month, and now I'm going to be wrapping it up with a movie review on a classic, well, I don't know about classic, but they're a comedy team that were very popular and have kind of become forgotten. A couple of years ago, I did a video on a forgotten comedy team called Clark and McCullough, and somebody said, why don't you do one on another team called Wheeler and Woolsey? And so I decided I'm going to take that opportunity now. Now, for a long time, I actually didn't discover this comedy team until maybe about 10 years ago or so. I first discovered them in a book written by film critic Leonard Maltin called Classic Comedy Teams. Basically, Wheeler and Woolsey were a very popular comedy team that made, I think, 22 movies together from 1929 until Woolsey's death in 1938. And basically he said, you know, they were forgotten and everything like that. And this really intrigued me. I really wanted to see, after I read this article, I really wanted to see a Wheeler and Woolsey movie. Well, I finally had that opportunity. When I was I saw my family prescribed to a magazine called TV Guide, where they, for those that see, this is how dated I am with my story. But anyway, I saw that they were on a show called Insomniac Theater. They were going to show a Wheeler and Woolsey comedy called Hook, Line, and Sinker. So I said, oh, here's my chance. So what I did was I set my VCR, again, this dates my story pretty much if you remember what VCRs and videotapes are. So I set my VCR to watch this movie and record it. I finally got my taste of Wheeler and Woolsey. I've seen a few of their other movies since then, and within the last few years, Turner Entertainment has released a lot of their, I think actually just about all their movies on DVD now, but for years you couldn't find any of their movies. So my overall impression with Wheeler and Woolsey is they're funny, they're just not my favorite. But who are Wheeler and Woolsey? Well, oh, by the way, I should probably mention, in addition to Leonard Maltin's book, Classic Comedy Teams, there's also a book about them by Ted Okuda and Edward Watts called Wheeler and Woolsey, the vaudeville comic duo in their films. So overall, basically who Wheeler and Woolsey are is it was made up of Burt Wheeler, who had curly hair, and Woolsey, who was kind of like the Groucho Marx or George Burns of the team. He smoked a cigar, had glasses. I don't think I would call Burt Wheeler a straight man. They were both comics. They both had their own comedic personality. Woolsey was definitely like the Groucho Marx or George Burns, where he would be throwing cracks and jokes everywhere. And Burt Wheeler was kind of like the higher pitched voice guy, and he also threw some one-liners and some other stuff. So they were both comedic personalities. There wasn't really a straight man or a comic in the team.
Stand still then, Shavetail, while I make you a captain.
You won't make me a captain. You'll make me a major. You know, the higher we go, the harder they'll fall.
A major? Certainly. Where do I keep my major? Ah, here they are. Majors. Nope, those are rear admirals.
A lot of people call them a vaudeville team, which is actually not correct. They were actually vaudeville comedians, but they had separate careers until they both got casted in a Broadway show in 1927, 1928 called Rio Rita. They had great chemistry together, and when RKO Radio Pictures, or Radio Pictures as it was called then, decided to film Rio Rita, they brought them over. They were impressed with what they saw, and they ended up starring in a series of films from 1929 until 1938. Woolsey died in 1938, and Wheeler carried on as a solo performer in nightclubs, some television, but never really a movie star again until he passed away in 1968. Well, now that we got that down, let's go ahead, and I'm going to be looking at one of their early films. It's called Halfshot at Sunrise. It's one of the three movies that are actually in the public domain. That's Dixiana, Halfshot at Sunrise, and Hook, Line, and Sinker. But this one is probably my favorite. It's probably not their best film, but it's of the three of those and of the early ones, this is probably one of my favorites that I've seen. It's basically set in Paris in 1918 during World War I, and simply put, Wheeler and Woolsey play two soldiers who go absent without leave, AOL. The film, it's basically a movie comedy with strings of gags, both visual and verbal, and there's a lot of plot points. Like, for example, there's the blustery Colonel Marshall trying to find Wheeler and Woolsey, have them arrested. There's Marshall's younger daughter, played by the team's usual leading lady, Dorothy Lee, who's out looking for love and finds it in Wheeler. You have Marshall's older daughter who's in love with a soldier that the colonel doesn't like. There's a French woman named Olga trying to have a relationship with the colonel, but with Colonel Marshall, which leads to an imagined liaison with Mrs. Marshall, and also Olga, of course, falls for Woolsey. So there's a lot going on in here. It's basically wall-to-wall gags and jokes, verbal and visual.
I'd like a serviette Sylvia. Sortez-moi.
It's not as fast-paced as an early Marx Brothers movie, but the jokes themselves do come fast and furious. Now, Wheeler and Woolsey have great chemistry. I think they have it down by this time. Like I said, it's their fourth film together, but it's their first where they're on their own. In their previous movies, they were starring in musicals where they had their own subplot and the romantic leads had their own subplot, like a regular musical of the day. George McFarlane is very good as the big-headed colonel, and future character actress Edna Mae Oliver has great visual reactions and comeback lines in her first movie. Dorothy Lee is both cute and spunky in her role, and she isn't a great singer, but she has energy, and she and Wheeler are great together. They have a nice musical number here between the two of them called Whistling the Blues Away. The actor is playing the MPs who are constantly, there's gags where Wheeler and Woolsey are being followed by these MPs and they're always getting outwitted. The MPs, their acting's not that great. It kind of lays it on a little bit thick with their parts. The movie was made in 1930, like I said, and surprisingly, it's not as static as a lot of other movies that were made at that time. There's a lot of scenes that are outside, and it's also what they call a pre-code movie, where it's loaded with some entendres, some that I don't know you can get away with today.
You look like $1 million.
I may look like $1 million, but I'm going to be much easier to make. Beavers.
My. That hat certainly has a marvelous wing spread. I'll bet you take off easily.
After the code, the team became a little bit more, I hate to say sanitized a little bit. A lot of people feel that's when they lost their edge, but there's a lot of entendre jokes in this movie. The team still, to me, in this movie come across as like they're acting on the stage, since they seem to be shouting their lines and laughing at their own jokes. Although, oddly enough, in their first movie, Rita, I felt like they gave a better screen performance in that movie than in this one. They do have a nice moment near the end where you can see some humility between the two of them as they go out on a mission to deliver plans. The subplot with the older sister and soldier that she's in love with hardly has any screen time, and you wonder why they're even in the movie at all. So overall, Halfshot at Sunrise is not their best film, but I think it's one of their finest early ones. And you might be wondering, well, Rob, why are Wheeler and Woolsey forgotten? You see the Marx Brothers, Laurel and Hardy, Three Stooges, and Abbott and Costello all the time. Why did they become forgotten? I don't know. I have a couple theories. One is, like I just mentioned, some of their early films is definitely for adults, and unlike Laurel and Hardy or the Three Stooges, and to an extent Marx Brothers, it was definitely not family-friendly entertainment, so that might be one reason. Another reason was that the studio, RKO, closed in 1958, and a lot of the films got sold off, so it's possible that might have been another reason. I don't know. But I've seen a lot of their movies, and they have varying degrees, so I'm glad they've kind of had a bit of a comeback, but maybe if they had a comeback during the 60s when a lot of these, or the 50s when a lot of these comedy teams were getting re-released to television, maybe they would have had a better chance. I don't know. But anyway, that's my take on Wheeler and Woolsey and Halfshot at Sunrise. If you have heard of the comedy team, what did you think? Go ahead and post it below, or if you have even seen the movie or any Wheeler and Woolsey movie, put in the link comment box below. Alright, well, thank you very much for watching, and I'll be doing some more April Fool's Comedy Month videos for the rest of the month. Thank you for watching.
Why aren't you in the Army? Well, that's a long story, Colonel. You see, it's this way. It's my feet. Well, what's the matter with them? Flat? Cold.